Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Express, which is becoming everyone's favorite talk show. It is profoundly real and interesting, so without any further delay, please help me welcome back to the stage the beautiful and expressive director of Express, Carolyn. Carolyn, take it away.
Welcome to Express. I'm your host, Carolyn. Yes, we've come back to another episode for someone to tell their story, but this is a continuation of episode one that we had with Dr. Colton Birch. Now, without further ado, I just want to encourage you to touch like, to share, and to subscribe so that you will be up to date with whatever um, episodes we put out. For those who are visiting, welcome. For those who have been with us, thank you so much for following. I just want to say one other thing that feel free to let me know if you have a story to tell. I'm willing, anyone call me, any sex, color, or whatever religion, I'm open. As long as you have a compelling story, you get in touch with me and I will be willing to let you express your story to the audience. Okay, I'm going to call in Dr. Carlton Birch now and to come to the stage. Welcome again, Dr. Birch. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Just happy to be back, and
Yes,
I'm excited to share.
right. Thank you, Carlton. Canute, rather. Yes.
Mm.
So the last time we spoke about, you know, where you were born and your parents and your other siblings. And now we got to the last episode. We spoke about you going to NCU, Northern Caribbean University, which was IIC at the time, Western Indies College. And you mentioned how you were determined to go. You didn't see the money, but you did take the time to go ahead and get everything together so that you were able to go. And you were helped by your sister, remember, and your mom. Okay, so let's start from there.
Well, I got there and I just hit the ground running. You
Yes.
know, the first day I got there, of course, I didn't know if they were going to register me. I thought maybe because I had a part of the money, but no money for the dorm for my accommodation. But I, I was hopeful. I was praying a lot, and I just trusted God. And um, the Lord helped me to get registered. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that first day, I I had met someone before who I know was working somewhere on campus, and I just thought, let me drop by there, see if they had any ideas, for my accommodation where I could go to find a place or something like that. Because I knew my brother used to live off campus for a part of the time he was there, so maybe there was accommodation available, and I don't know if there were ways that could work. It could work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped me because I the person said to me that I should go to his landlord and just see. There was no bedroom available, no bed, but I went, and the Lord would so have it that he sent. He said yes, and he sent for a little kind of cot-like bed, you know, which was next door at his sister's house, and he put it in one of the corners of the room, which had another bed on which two other students were sleeping. That same guy and somebody else, and
Okay.
I was happy to have one by myself, as
Sure.
small whatever it was, but uh, and so I was able to have that for myself, and that was really good. In fact, I slept on that Same thing for the rest of my school life. For
Wow.
all 4 years,
All
you
4 years.
all
Very
4 years I slept on it, and it worked well for me. It was a fairly new house, like might have been built a couple or so years ago, so it was really nice.
uh-huh.
Nice house, nicest house I'd ever lived in,
Okay.
up to that point. And the person, the landlord, was very nice. He was an old gentleman, and he was a chef in England, and you know he was a good cook, in other words. So I
Yeah.
started doing that until, in my second year I became a vegetarian. I started learning to cook for myself.
Oh,
So you know, yeah, I was able to hit the ground running, got myself situated in school, and believe it or not, excuse me,
mm-hmm.
you know, I I just was able to get my confidence back because I started to perform at the level that I knew that I could, and or close to it, and ultimately, from my first year, I was able to start, getting, in the honors category, and became a member of the honors, the inaugural honor society, that
Mm.
they started there. I think when Dr. Lash was the dean. So I was proving to myself that I can do this, and it was very encouraging. I was able to finish, to complete that in 4 years without actually stopping. Though there were times when the professor, came to the classroom and read out a list of names of individuals who needed to go to the business office, and my name
Oh,
was
wow.
almost,
You know what that
perhaps,
means?
always, yeah. Mhm. That
Oh
means you
boy.
hadn't paid your bill,
Yes.
and and you were about to be dropped from classes. And
Wow.
there were times when I was, and I had to stay away, but there were some good professors, one of them on this, on your in your ministry, that
Yeah.
your husband, who used to allow me to sit, so that I, hopefully when I get my stuff in order, I wouldn't have lost all
Definitely.
the lectures and whatever. And that helped me. I mean, even to the point where I remember, even sometime when it came to exam, and I hadn't cleared, and I wasn't supposed to get the exam, but I was allowed to sit the exam in outside of the regular exam room, so that hopefully when I got cleared, I would have my work up to par, and
Wow.
so
Mm.
I was helped
Yes.
in those
Yes.
ways,
God worked. God
when I
worked it out. Yes. Yes.
and it worked out.
Yeah.
I got a went to Kingston during the first semester. Started, my brother took me out one day and showed me how to canvas, because he canvassed when he was at Harrison. My
Calporting,
eldest,
right?
yes, he did colporting, and as a result of that, after he went out with me that one day, I just went started going out on my own the day after, and you know did very, I mean, quite well, because I was determined that this was going to have to work.
Mm. Mm.
To the extent that my brother, who was going to Michael at the time, with whom I was staying in Kingston on the campus of Michael College, then now Michael University College, whatever, he saw how cashy I was. And he
From
was
your
there.
Calporting. And let me just explain for a minute for those who don't know. Well,
Yeah,
Calporting means he was selling books.
yeah. Yeah, I
So
used to walk
um,
from door to door,
mhm.
in New Kingston mainly. Well, a lot, and going to those office buildings, Mutual Life and whatever, and so I could hide from the sun also, and be
Yes.
in air condition
Did,
sometimes.
did you get all your book? Did you get all your money whenever you went to sell any book? What was how did
I
what was your
Yeah.
method?
What did you mean by getting money? You mean
Meaning
if
you sell a book, they would always give you the money right away.
no. Sometimes
Okay.
I had to go back sometimes, and that's why I went up to Kingston, on weekends
Mhm.
sometimes, with my friends who were hitchhiking, and we hitchhiked, much of the way, into
Yes.
Kingston. Sometimes we knew a student, or a professor, whatever, who was going, and but yeah, so I managed to go up some weekends to collect. Sometimes I went and didn't get anything from those who were supposed to pay me, and I had to go back empty, or even maybe get a fare from my sister who was then at the University of the West Indies. Yeah,
Yeah.
her last $10 or whatever, how many
Yeah.
dollars it took to get back to Mandeville.
Yeah.
So that's how I did it. Just kind of roughing it through college that way. But I tried my best to stay on top of my work because I knew where I was heading,
Mm,
into academically, where I wanted to go, and nothing was going to stop that in my mind.
mm.
So yeah, I eventually graduated, and surprisingly, I graduated with money left over in my pocket.
Wow.
I mean,
Understood.
yeah, with money that uh, I could use to buy myself a suit or two when I graduated from college. Uh,
That's wonderful.
because I was getting every now and then my one of my uncles from England would send me a 50 pounds or something like that,
Yeah.
and it went a far way during those days, and that helped me along with whatever I could get from wherever, from canvassing, and I don't even know where else.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, where did it all come from, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So, so you're in Jamaica. All up to this point, you're in Jamaica.
I am. Uh-huh.
Okay. So you graduated,
Mhm.
and what's next?
Well, I in my f- I mean, I joined the Meister Singers in my second year, I think, in college, and which I enjoyed. I love singing.
Yeah,
I
I was with them too.
always enjoyed singing in my high school choir and whatever. So I really loved music,
Mhm.
and uh, it so happened that as I was making my plans for for going to Andrews, in my third year, I think towards the end of my third year, I applied to Andrews and I was accepted. So I knew where I was going by come January of the year when I was going to graduate. I already knew that I was going to Andrews, even though I didn't know where the money was coming from or
Mm.
know where I was going to get a visa from.
You're going to
Because
walk.
I didn't have the financial backing to put that 2,000 US dollars down that I needed to in order to apply for a student visa,
Yes.
for Andrews. But I just said, well, the Lord is in charge of this, so I'm just doing what I know to do and just leave the rest.
Yeah.
So I left the rest to Him, and just kept on doing what I knew to do. And it so happened that that year, the choir got invited to General Conference in
Mm.
New Orleans, and I was in the Master Singer, so I got to go. I knew, and I also had applied to Ontario Conference to go and canvass there. I was accepted. I later on, coming close to the time for graduation, I heard about Wisconsin Conference that was also hiring students from Jamaica. And so a friend of mine and I, Eddie Jackson, I can call his name because
Yeah.
we applied for it, and I came up, went to General Conference, sang with them, and came back to Miami, and then I had a friend pick me up,
Yeah.
from the choir, and stayed with him a few days in Miami, and then he gave me a ticket, to New York, where I
Mhm.
had a brother. And that's where then shortly after I went there, um, my friend who had also got accepted to canvas
Canada.
in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay.
Yeah, he called me from Jamaica and said he wanted to come up. Now I was barely catching where finding a place to stay.
Yes.
That's what I mean by Jamaican word
Yes.
catch.
Yes. I understand.
But I was barely finding a place to stay there, sleeping on a couch or something, and he wanted to come, and I, I, I was in a panic because I just came here. I don't have any place. I don't have anything. But I turned to my relative and asked, I told him, and he said, yeah. so,
Good.
so essentially, we ended up sleeping on the floor. And then maybe after a few days, I think we took a bus, the Greyhound bus, to Wisconsin
Okay.
and canvassed there for 2 months. You know,
Was it
made
worth
a,
it?
made a little, huh?
Was it worth it?
Yes, the experience was good. The money, we didn't make the kind of money, and when we were to collect, also I had to leave money behind for
Mhm.
people whom I had delivered books to because
Bookstore.
they hadn't paid up, all the money. But I don't even remember how much I had out of that to go to Andrews. But I went in faith, and uh, somehow the Lord found me a place to stay with some friends, and that's how I got started there.
And what course were you doing there?
Well, I wanted to be an archaeologist. My goal in coming to America was not to live in America, but to get myself a PhD in archaeology and go back to West Indies College to set up a department of archaeology. That was in my head. It's not something that I had worked out with anybody, but something that I had decided to do. And it so happened that even during that time, the then president came up there and saw me on the campus of Andrews and invited me back to
Oh,
come back and teach, when I was done with what I was doing. And not only verbally, but he also sent me a letter. That was Dr. Lashley at the time. He sent me a letter inviting me to come back and teach at in this college. When I was done with whatever I was doing. Of course, that never materialized, even to this day. But I continued uh, studying there. What I did was to apply for the subsidized course with the general conference so that I could finish some courses cheaply and then transfer them to the MA. So from the what they call it, Master of Divinity. I did some courses that were transferable. I spoke with the chair department, and told him what I wanted to do, but I don't have the money to go straight into the program. So he- if I if he could guide me as to what courses I needed to do in order to that were transferable,
mm-hmm.
and he guided me accordingly. And so I was able to get those courses done free of cost, essentially. And then at the end of I think 2 semesters or so in the MDiv, I transferred because I had exhausted the number of transferable courses.
Courses.
And it looked at me and he said, I mean, for the whatever 16 or so years I've been here, and he was chair of the department, he said, I've never seen anybody do something like this. But I was just, kind of turning my hand and making fashion in an academic way,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yes.
because I just needed to find a way to get this done. And so I transferred and started doing something that I really loved, and it was really good. It was tough going to Andrews, though. I mean, in that
In what
first,
way? In what way?
I mean, the weather, the climate rather.
Okay.
My goodness, going to class at 7 o'clock in the morning with clothes that you wore in Jamaica. It was like I was freezing. I got to class and I was numb because I was walking. My feet were almost lifeless. I
Oh.
was so numb. My fingers. I sat there for the first 15 minutes and I was just thawing out.
Mm.
I couldn't even concentrate because I was freezing and I didn't have a jacket, a
Mm-hmm.
proper jacket
It's
to
so
wear,
weird.
winter jacket.
You're warm.
It
Mm-hmm.
was deathly cold, for me, and it was tough. It was tough. I just prayed that I said I after I finished that course, which you know, which was my worst course in the seminary. You know, um, I said never again will I do a course in the early morning. I was so happy when I transferred, and our classes started at a different time in the MA program. But it was really, really, really tough. But I
Mm.
decided that hey, I came for this. It's gonna have to work.
Good. Okay. Any other challenges you had while you were in school?
Oh, significant challenges. I
Go
mean,
go ahead.
none of
Tell,
them were
tell the
academic.
audience. Tell the audience.
Yeah.
so they can see that, to where you are now, it's not just like that.
Mhm.
Tell them some of the challenges that you had.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I know I got straight when I was there was, the academics. I made sure that despite all the challenges, that was going to have to go right,
Yeah.
in order to get me to where I wanted to go. So I just kind of lived in the library. I mean, because I couldn't work on campus anyhow. And mind you, by this time, I still am on a visitor's visa. I I I applied for the student visa. Fortunately, my uncle in England put down the $2,000, which was to go back to him, at the end of my studies, but he didn't have money to pay my tuition or anything to help me even. But he put out that money so that I could apply for the visa. I applied, and at the by the time I got to the end of my first year there, they had denied it. They denied me the student visa and sent me a letter telling me to leave the country.
No.
But I think God had other plans that it wasn't according to His plans for me to do that in my mind because I hadn't accomplished my goals.
Mhm.
So I decided to stay. But having kind of run out of accommodation, um, run out of money, I decided to, and also very, very scared of
Mhm.
being deported because I had known of at least one person who was deported already from that campus to back to Jamaica. Uh, I decided to go back to New York and figure this thing out.
Mhm.
Was there for a while. Got a job as a walking messenger, going from building to building in Manhattan, New York City, and getting wet from the rain and whatever. And at the end of the week, after traveling about hour and 3/4 to 2 hours on the bus and then the train from White Plains going down to Manhattan and then coming back after at the end of the week still making like $81 or 80 something dollars, which was hardly more than enough, I mean, to pay my fare, and certainly not to buy lunch except for maybe just something for $1 or something like that.
Mhm.
So, but I had a goal in mind, and the Lord helped me that after a few months, I was able to. I saw a car selling for $300, and I bought it with a bad engine, and that made me mobile, so I could use it to do a kind of driving messenger job. So I started. One time I had about 3 or 4 jobs or something like that. I
Mhm.
was I started delivering newspapers early in the morning.
Mhm.
I was delivering pizza in the evenings, and I was doing something else that I can't remember. About 3 jobs. That I was doing at the time, and just trying to make it happen. And I was working really hard and efficiently, apparently, because I remember one time I did so well that at the Domino's pizza store,
Okay.
they gave me they gave me an award for my performance, and the tips were very helpful to good.
Mhm.
Interesting thing is that, and all of this I'm doing so that I can work money to go back to school. But after about a couple or so months, the guy asked me for my green card,
Wow.
and that was my last day at the work because I you know after he asked me to bring it in. I said okay, you know, and I just left, and that was the last time he saw me, you
Wow.
know, because I didn't have a green card to bring in,
Wow.
but I kept finding things that I could hustle, at, and in order to work up some money. Of course, couldn't get a regular job because of that
Yes.
problem,
Yes. Yes.
but I had a valid social security number that I had
Mm.
got from the social security office. I
Yes.
just went there and told them I wanted a social security card. And they asked me, why do I need, I mean, do you have a, whatever and whatever. I I had my passport with me. And I said, I'm on a visitor's visa. But I said, uh, is there nothing? I just asked him a question. He said, is there no reason for someone with a visitor visa to get a social security card? I
Uh-huh.
just, yeah, something like that. I asked
Yeah.
them, and they didn't ask me any more questions. They just
Gave it to
took
you.
my application and said, they didn't, I got a valid social security number back, but it said not for employment.
Okay.
But that's what I used. That's what I used at Andrews and wherever. And to say it's the same social security number I have till this day as a citizen of the United States. You know,
Wow.
but yeah, it was really tough in New York. I had to rough it. Living, I mean, I was living in a nice place, but I didn't have a bed for myself. I mean, for my first how many years I didn't have a bed for myself. I mean, I even had a master's degree and still didn't have a bed for myself. But I just decided that this just has to work.
Yes.
As long as I can stay out of the cold, it doesn't matter. I slept on the floor. I mean, I literally did. Sleep on the floor on the carpet in order to survive. And make it even. When I graduated and came back to New York to hustle, you know. So it was really tough.
Mm.
It was really tough. I went back to Andrews after about a year in New York. Still didn't have the money to register. Um, I didn't, by this time I was in the MA course, and
Mhm.
it was a lot more. But I didn't have a penny to register. I just picked up my things and said, I'm going back after I'd done a lot of
I just
fasting and
love that spirit. I just
praying.
love that spirit, man. I love that
it,
spirit.
I needed it. I needed it because there was, I mean, I just couldn't see myself going back to Jamaica without
What you
what I
came
came
for.
for.
Mm.
And so I just did everything, while at the same time keeping everything on the wraps because
Mhm.
I didn't, I don't know who was who and what people would do. So
Mhm.
I wasn't walking about telling everybody, my
Right.
business. I
Mhm.
just kept it to myself to the extent that I could,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
didn't talk about it, to know anybody. I miraculously, I told them my story, decided to register me without a penny, literally not a penny paid. But they registered me and I started classes. So after about the first week or so in classes, and mind you, by this time I had developed a strategy that while I'm in class, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit close to the door. And if anybody came in there and they spoke to the professor and called anything that sounded like my name, I was not there. I was gone. I literally,
And so go ahead now.
yeah. So I remember even getting on the phone one time. They had some pay phones around the campus. I got on the phone one time. I called the foreign student affairs office.
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to go there in person. Less, I don't know how this thing works, but
Works
I
right.
didn't want to be detained or
Contact
anything
you.
like that.
Yes.
So I just called the person on the phone and said, "Listen, I am back on campus because I had left. I assumed that the immigration had sent a letter to the student foreign student affairs office when they sent one to me. And because we were in communication while I was there. I was in communication with that office, overseeing my status
Mhm.
as a student. So I assumed that they had got a letter from them. So I just called to say, listen, I am back. My status hasn't changed, but please understand, I am here to prepare to serve the Lord, to work in the Lord, do the Lord's work, to help to bring people in His kingdom. And please, ma'am, if the immigration does not call you and ask, for me, or if they don't send you a letter inquiring about me, please don't volunteer the information to them. so I can get through this. I just have this left to go, and I'll be done, and I'll be able to go and do the Lord's work.
What did she say?
I don't recall that she said anything. I just know
You
I
have
got
got
what I and I don't know if I was to be relieved from saying that, but I needed to say that to
it.
her,
Yeah, because you
and I
just felt
did.
yes,
And
yes.
perhaps I felt, perhaps I felt, but so I called a friend in New York and told them about it. A pastor, and they said in Jamaica, boy, if it was if I were me, I mean, I'm going. If it was me, I wouldn't be
With the
going
good.
back.
No
I wouldn't.
encouragement, right?
Well, yeah, because they just to think of it, it was just so scary,
Yes,
because
yes.
it was a real
But that
thing. It was
shows
a
the
real
guts that you
possibility,
have. Yes. And
you
you
know.
you had the faith that God would deliver you, and he did.
Yeah,
So
I
so
just
you're
said,
in the class now. So you're in the class.
uh-huh. Yeah, so I essentially just stayed there, uh, did my best. I went to pick apples during the fall, because that's the only thing I could find to do where somebody would employ me. Um, in my first year there, during the fall of that year, some Jamaicans were there who were doing that, and they told me about it, and I went with them. And so I knew where the place was. I knew where the owner's house was, and I drove my little car that I had now, my $300 car, uh, and went there, and the man decided to hire me to pick apples again. So I
Hmm.
went and started picking apples, to get some pocket money, and the money that I got, it couldn't pay my rent. I had a brother who would send me some rent money, like about $55 a month or something like that, to pay my rent, but nothing else. And I just used that money to buy the little things that I needed to eat and pay. And yeah, that's all I could do. So I
So
would
what did you
buy.
buy for food then?
You don't want to know that. But anyhow,
Yes, of
I
course. Okay.
and I knew that if I got some cornmeal and put it with it, it wouldn't
Yes.
constipate me. So I made sure to mix it a little bit, a bit. And then I had flour dumpling in the morning, fried flour dumpling, with a little cornmeal. And I had cornmeal porridge with that, you know. uh,
Right. So that's another meal.
yeah, yeah. So I had that with the thing. And I think that's I had some I bought a whole lot of peanuts because they were cheap too, and some
Mhm.
bananas.
Yes.
And that's all I had. And sometimes for weeks and months, that's all I was eating. And I came home in the evening. Instead of frying the dumplings, now I cook the dumplings. Oh, sometimes I got some green bananas, and cook them with that. And that's all I was eating for months and months. And I occasionally I would. I think they had a place. Was there a place that I could get a bread or something like that, or whatever? But that's all I was living on. There were times when I had to do involuntary fasting and turn it into a spiritual fasting. On the Sabbath. You
Yes.
know, in order to survive, because I didn't want to tell anybody, that I didn't have food to eat. You know, um, and I just survived that way, and I don't know if I lost any weight or anything. I don't know. I was exercising regularly, and
Yes. So that's good. That's good that you were
carbohydrates,
exercising.
and flour, was bulk,
Mhm.
so it helped me. I probably kept my weight. I felt good. I felt healthy.
Mhm.
I would jog in the evenings and nights after I left library at 10:15. Because that's all I did.
And that
Was
helped the stress too, the
Of
jogging.
course, if of course, it definitely did. But I'm gonna say something that I have never told my siblings before.
Okay.
And if they are listening, this will be the first time that they hear it. I kept holding. I just told my wife about 2 years ago. While I
Okay.
was at Andrews, my father died. No, in Wisconsin, my father died while I was out there canvassing. And my brother was giving me the money to go, but he was like giving me his last money. He was gonna get married in the September. And then my eldest brother out there said, "Why come? Because if you come, you may not be able to go back, and certainly you don't have the money to do it." So after I was packed, I'm gonna go. We aborted that. I didn't go. So what I did when I was at Andrews, and I thought about the fact that my father had died, and things had been so. When I heard from home, I heard the struggles my mother was going through because I had two younger sisters who
Mm.
were going to Racines High School at the time, and I heard that all that they were going through. I prayed to the Lord, right? I was sitting at they call him a carrel or whatever, in the library, the upstairs of the library. I remember crying literal tears, nobody knowing what is going on. I'm all in a corner, almost a dark section, just enough for me to read. And I cried literal tears and I prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, make me a savior for my family.
Oh, mercy. Mercy.
Mm.
Like a Joseph, huh?
And I have to drink some water so I can continue this
Yes.
because it
Like
gets
a
really.
like a Joseph, huh?
I said, Lord, make me a savior for my family. Because I realized all my siblings, most of them were in teaching and they were doing their best to help everybody else. But the money in teaching in Jamaica was not going very far.
Yes.
And my mother needed help and couldn't get the help. Things were, after my father died, they had to sell the pickup truck that they had. The farm had a loan on it, I understand, and things just nobody was there to run it because my older siblings, brothers, had left home already, and it was a struggle.
Mm.
I mean, worse than it was when I was growing up because of that. And even though I was in school, I didn't. I mean, might have been the stupidest prayer I've ever prayed. Because I didn't know what I was asking for. And to ask for such a burden. I don't know, but in the emotion of it, I guess, and the care and concern for my family, I prayed the prayer. And so I am convinced that what I'm seeing today, what I'm realizing today, what I've been realizing over the years because of what I've been able to personally do financially for my family, my extended family now, my you know those who I was able to help in this way, and also you know family, the family home to build, and to set my mother up in business and all of that kind of thing, so that she could be, you know, uh, survive on her own.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that it was the Lord answering that prayer that I prayed very selflessly while I was there at Andrews. And even though for 2 quarters, full load, I got registered without paying a dime
Mm-hmm.
after telling them, a story, which was I had bought another car for $300, and I did some body works on it, which I never knew what I was doing. But I read up something and did, the body work on the car, sanded it down and putted it, whatever it is called, and then painted it for $99. I was trying to sell it for what, 1,000 or $1,200, and I was going to use that money to pay some of my bill,
Goofy, yeah.
my school fee, but it never got sold because everybody was too busy to, do that, to sell it. So it was there. And um, I got to the point where, again, I was at the crossroads because I didn't have money to go on. Um, I couldn't imagine, find a way to get me through the next quarter to finish the school year. So I went to the chair of my department to tell him, because we had developed a relationship from my first year, with him guiding me. Uh, and I said to him, his name was Dr. Storfield. I said, Dr. Storfield, I'm going to go back to New York and I'm not going to come back because I have run out of money and I can't see my way through. And immediately, like a drop of a hat, he he said to me, which nearly blew me out of my chair. He said, Canute, we have decided to give you a scholarship to finish. No, the department, he said, the department has decided to give you a scholarship to finish your program. So uh, it just blew me away, and I was so elated that I didn't even I perhaps was dumbfounded,
Yes, yes.
dumbfounded,
Praise
you know,
God, definitely.
and happy. But the Lord worked it out. The Lord worked it out, and that's what took care of the last part of my tuition. But even with that promise, I still didn't know how I was going to pay my stay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I still didn't know how I was going to pay for my accommodation. Well, you know what? The Lord got me through it. The Lord got me through it, going through some of the same things, that I did before to provide for myself. And I was able to, finish all my coursework. And then I came back to New York to write my paper,
mm-hmm.
my thesis. And it 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 was a struggle because it was difficult to find all the material I needed in New York, because archaeology is not taught in every university. Only very few in America and the world that taught biblical archaeology. And but in any case, I eventually got that done, and was able to go back in March. But I learned a lot of lessons during that time. And that primary among them was that I can depend on the Lord. I can trust the Lord to help me through whatever it is, because He is faithful. And as long as I keep depending on Him and doing what I can, the Lord has already made a way, and
Mm-hmm.
He will open my eyes to see the way that He has prepared. That's how I was able to finish with that. So I came back to New York before I was finished, and about the April of that year, um, didn't graduate that summer because I didn't finish my paper. It was the following year. That was 1988 or somewhere there, and it was the following year that I was able to finish the paper and graduate. Uh, but I started working in New York, working not a real regular job. I started hustling with a car. You know, my one of my relatives gave me a car to hustle from the airport and hustle whatever, carry passengers wherever. So that's what I started doing. And I mean, this thing got so good. The first day I went out there, after he had just taken me one day and shown me the ropes, the first day I got out there, I made $160, and in the late 1980s, that would be decent, and I said, well, I must make at least $160 every day as of now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think by the end of that week or the second week, somewhere there, I bumped it up to $300 and said, you know, I must make at least $300 every day, you know. And by the end of that, by the end of that, this was I started in about April, and by November, I paid off Andrews the money that I had owed him.
Wow.
Yeah, I may have, it might have been whatever, maybe over $3,000. I know it was over $3,000. So I paid them off everything that I owed them. So I was able now to get my transcript, and I I continued to save and hustle. I remember sometimes they were slashing my tires because I was doing so well. Yeah, I would go to my car with a passenger, and the some of the other guys would slash my tires. Sometimes two
Really?
tires. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, sometimes two tires. I had to get a tow truck to pick up the car and take it to buy two new tires. Those kind of things. I mean, some nasty things, and
Mm.
um, but
You
but
kept going. You kept
I decided I had to keep going,
going. Of
and I
course.
kept going until within by the end of the December of that year that I came from Andrews, I was able to buy myself a super stretch limousine. you
Mm.
know, you know, those big long cars that you see people driving around in New York City. I was able to buy one of them for myself. I think I paid down maybe $9,000 that I had saved up after paying off Andrews. I was
Right.
able to save that up and pay down on the limousine, and now I could do weddings and everything. I could, so we set up a business,
Yeah.
and I started, we started doing weddings, and we get excuse me, got another limousine so that we could do more than one car
Mm-hmm.
working for a wedding and all of that. And we started driving celebrities, started driving diplomats, whatever, government, which I remember, I was trying to remember earlier, Dick Gregory. Remember, Dick Gregory was my regular passenger. He would call me when he was coming in and say, pick me up at LaGuardia, and I would go with have a long talk all the way to the city. We became good friends. Dick Gregory was a civil rights, one of the civil rights activists of America from the 1960s, Martin Luther King, Judah King days. The one who invented the Bahamian diet, and numerous other people. Our company drove people like Shabba Ranks and Lawrence Taylor, the NFL star, and numerous other individuals. I remember even one time I got a job. There was this Jamaican festival winner named Ras Carby. I had him for a whole week. I
Mm.
drove him for a whole week, and he came in town for a Ziggy Marley concert on the
Right.
west side of Manhattan, and I I was able to pull my limousine in backstage. He introduced me to Rita Marley and the daughters of Bob Marley and all those people that I never met in Jamaica, but
Wow.
I met them here, and I was able to walk into the concert from the backstage for the first time in my life ever going to something like that.
Yeah.
And I looked, and when Ziggy came out and started playing, I went backstage, met LL Cool J and other celebrities that were there that were
Mhm.
friends of Ras Carby, and the Marley family, and all of that kind of thing. So I tasted some of that.
Yes.
My focus was on what I came to America for,
Mhm.
because I was just doing this in order to make some money to go back to school.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And the Lord blessed. I was able to help my mama, so she could start earning for herself to help my siblings, my younger sisters who were going to Rashis at the time to go
Yes.
to school, and to the extent that, and then sending money to start building over the family home, and she was able to take care of her needs, and until I eventually went down and told her that I'm gonna take you out of the so that I could, or we could, because other siblings helped too, but that we could get the place, tear down, the old section, and get more of it done. And I brought her up here.
Okay.
I brought her up here, applied for visa, and then I was sending her on two vacations every year,
Wow.
one to Jamaica and one to England. She lived with me, for about what, maybe 10, 11 years. She lived in my house, and I every year, every single year, she was on at least two vacations,
Hmm.
you know, uh,
So did you were you able to help your brothers
going to
and
Jamaica,
sisters?
spending 2 weeks or whatever, and then going to England and spending, 2 weeks or so. So I feel good that the Lord, you know, answered my
You,
prayer, and
and you help your
I was
brothers and
in it.
sisters as well, did you? Were you able to?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
So the Lord answered your prayer.
When
Mercy.
when one of my brothers got accepted into University of West Indies, I said, "Go, I'll pay the first year school fee," and I sent the money to pay the entire first year school fee. Help my other brother was at NCU. I was able to help him, you know, at times. I was able to help my younger, one of my youngest sister, when she was going to Michael. When my eldest sister, who had given me that money, when she was finishing up her master's degree, she called me and said, she couldn't continue, or she needed that they wouldn't allow her to, and she needed a few $1,000s to pay the school, Nova University. And she called me. I just um, whatever, wrote the check, or whatever, wired the money or something. I did, and I took care of that, and she was able to finish her first master's degree, and then she went on and did another one sometime after that. Those kind of things. The Lord just helped me.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going